Vadis, chapter 28. Petronius to Vinicius, have pity, carissime. Imitate not in thy letters the Lacedaemonians or Julius Caesar. Couldst thou, like Julius, write Venedi, Vidi, Vici? I came, I saw, I conquered. I might understand thy brevity, but thy letter means absolutely veni, vidi, fugi. I came, I saw, I fled. Since such a conclusion of the affair is directly opposite to thy nature, since thou art wounded, and since finally uncommon things are happening to thee, that letters need explanation. I cannot believe my eyes when I read that the legion giant killed Croton as easily as a Caledonian dog will kill a wolf in the defiles of Hibernia. That man is worth as much gold as he himself weighs, and it depends on him alone to become a favorite of Caesar. When I return to the city, I must gain a nearer acquaintance with that legion, and have a bronze statue of him made for myself. Ageno Barbus will burst from curiosity when I tell him that it is from nature. Bodies really athletic are becoming rarer in Italy and in Greece. Of the Orient, no mention need be made. The Germans, though large, have muscles covered with fat, and are greater in bulk than in strength. Learn from the legion if he is an exception, or if in his country there are more men like him. Should it happen some time to thee or me to organize games officially, it will be well to know where to seek for the best body. But praise to the gods of the Orient and the Occident that thou hast come out of such hands alive. Thou hast escaped, of course, because thou art a patrician and the son of a consul, but everything which has happened astonished me in the highest degree. That cemetery where thou wert among the Christians, they, their treatment to thee, the subsequent flight of Lygia, finally that peculiar sadness and disquiet which breathes from thy short letter. Explain, for there are many points which I cannot understand. And if thou wish the truth, I will tell thee plainly that I understand neither the Christians nor thee nor Lygia. Wonder not that I, who care for few things on earth except my own person, inquired of thee so eagerly. I have contributed to all these affairs of thine, hence it is my affair so far. Write soon, for I cannot foresee surely when we may meet. In Bronzebeard's head plans change, as winds do in autumn. At present, while tarrying in Beneventum, he has the wish to go straight away to Greece without returning to Rome. Tigellinus, however, advises him to visit the city even for a time, since the people, yearning overmuch for his person, breed for games and bread, might revolt. So I cannot tell him it will be. Should Achaea overbalance, we may want to see Egypt. I shall insist with all my might on thy coming, for I think that in thy state of mind travelling and our amusements will be a medicine, but thou mightst not find us. Consider, then, whether in that case repose in thy Sicilian states will not be preferable to remaining in Rome. Write me minutely of thyself, and farewell. I add no wish this time except health, for by Pollux I know not what to wish thee. Vinicius, on receiving this letter, felt at wish no desire to reply. He had a kind of feeling that it was not worth while to reply, that an answer will benefit no one in any way, that it will explain nothing. Discontent and a feeling of the vanity of life possessed him. He thought, moreover, that Petronius will not comprehend him in any case, and that something had happened in which will remove them from each other. He could not come to an agreement with himself even. When he returned from the Transsiber to his splendid insula, he was exhausted, and found for the first days a certain satisfaction in rest and in the comfort and abundance about him. That satisfaction lasted but a short time, however. He felt soon that he was living in vanity, that all which so far had formed the interest of his life either had ceased to exist for him or had shrunk to proportion barely perceptible. He had a feeling as if those ties which hitherto had connected with him with life had been cut in his soul, and though no new ones had been formed, at the thought that he might go to Beneventum and thence to Achaia, to swim in a life of luxury and wild access, he had a feeling of emptiness. To what end? What should I gain from it? These were first questions which passed through his head, and for the first time in life also he thought that if he went the conversation of Petronius, his wit, his quickiness, his exquisite outlining of thought, and his choice of apt phrases for every idea might annoy him. But solitude, too, had begun to annoy him. All his acquaintances were with Caesar in Beneventum, so he had to stay at home alone, with a head full of thoughts and a heart full of feelings which he could not analyze. He had moments, however, in which he judged that if he could converse with someone about everything that took place in him, perhaps he might be able to grasp it somehow, bring it to order, and estimate it better. Under the influence of this hope, and after some days of hesitation, he decided to answer Petronius. And those not certain that he will send the answer, he wrote in the following words: Is thy wish that I write more minutely? Agreed then. Whether I shall be able to do it more clearly I cannot tell, for there are many knots which I know not myself how to loosen. I described to thee my stay among the Christians, and their treatment of enemies, among whom they had right to count both me and Chilo. Finally, of the kindness with which they nursed me, and of the disappearance of Lygia. No, my dear friend, I was not spared because of being the son of a consul. Such considerations do not exist for them, since they forgave even Chilo, though I urged them to bury him in the garden. Those are people such as the world has not seen here hitherto, and their teachings is of a kind that the world has not heard of to this time. I can say nothing else, and hears who measures them with our measure. I tell thee that, if I had been lying with a broken arm in my own house, and if my own peoples, even my own family, had nursed me, I should have had more comforts, of course, but I should not have received half the care which I found among them. Know this too, that Lygia is like the others. Had she been my sister or my wife, she could not have nursed me more tenderly. Delight filled my heart more than once, for I judged that love alone could not inspire like tenderness. More than once I saw love in her look, in her face, and wilt thou believe me? Among those simple people then in that poor chamber, which was at once a colina and a triclinium, I felt happier than ever before. No, she was not indifferent to me, and today even I cannot think that she was. Still that same Lygia left Miriam's dwelling in secret because of me. I sit now whole days in my head on my hands and think, why did she do so? Have I written thee that I volunteered to restore her to Aulus? True, she declared that to be impossible at the present because Aulus and Pomponia had gone to Sicily, and because news of her return going from house to house through slaves could reach the Palatine, and Caesar might take her from Aulus again. But she knew that I would not pursue her longer, that I had left the way of violence, that, unable to cease loving her or to live without her, without bringing her into my house through a weathered door, and seat her on a sacred skin at my heart. Still she fled. Why? Nothing was threatening her. Did she not love me, she might have rejected me. The day before her flight, I met the acquaintance of a wonderful man, a certain Paul of Tarsus, who spoke to me of Christ and his teachings, and spoke with such power that every word of his, without his willing it, turns all the foundations of our society into ashes. That same man visited me after her flight and said, if God open thy eyes to the light and take the beam from them as he took it from mine, thou wilt feel that she acted properly, and then perhaps thou wilt find her. And now I am breaking my head over these words, as if as if I had heard them from the mouth of the Pythoness at Delphi. I seem to understand something. Though they love people, the Christians are enemies of our life, our gods, and our crimes. Hence she fled from me, as from a man who belongs to our society, and with whom she will have to share a life counted criminal by Christians. Thou wilt say that since she might reject me, she had no need to withdraw. But if she loved me, in that case she desired to flee from love. At the very thought of this, I wished to send slaves into every alley in Rome, and command them to cry throughout the houses, "Return, Lygia." But I ceased to understand why she fled. I should not have stopped her from believing in her Christ, and will myself have reared an altar to him in the atrium. What harm could one more God do to me? Why might I not believe in him, I who do not believe overmuch in all gods? I know with full certainty that the Christians do not lie, and they say that they say that he rose from the dead. A man cannot rise from the dead. That Paul of Tarsus, who is a Roman citizen, but who, as the as a Jew knows the old Hebrew writings, told me that the coming of Christ was promised by the prophets for a whole thousand of years. All these are uncommon things, but does not the uncommon surround us every side? People have not ceased talking yet of Apollonius of Tyana, Paul's statement that there is one God, not a whole assembly of them, seems sound to me. Perhaps Seneca is of this opinion, and before him many others. Christ lived, gave himself to be crucified for the salvation of the world, and rose from the dead. All this is perfectly certain. I do not see, therefore, reasons why I should insist on an opposite opinion, or why I should not rear to him an altar. If I am ready to rear one to Serapis, for instance, it will not be difficult for me even to renounce other gods, for no reasoning minds believe in them at the present. But it seems to all this is not enough yet for the Christians. It is not enough to honor Christ. One must live according to his teachings. And here thou art on the shore of sea, which they command thee to wade through. If I promise to do so, they themselves will feel that the premise was an empty sound of words. Paul told me so openly, "Thou knowest how I love Lygia, and knowest that there is nothing I will not do for her. Still, even at her wish, I cannot raise Socrates or Vesuvius on my shoulders, or place Trasiamene Lake on the palm of my hand, or from black make my eyes blue like those of the legions. If she so desired, I could have the wish, but the change does not lie in my power. I am not a philosopher, but also I am not so dull as have seemed perhaps more than once to thee. I will state now the following. I know not how the Christians order their own lives, but I know that where their religion begins, Roman rule ends. Rome itself ends. Our mode of life ends. The distinction between conquered and conqueror, between rich and poor, lord and slave ends. Government ends. Caesar ends. Law and all the order of the world ends, and in place of those appear Christ, with a certain mercy not existent hitherto, and kindness opposed to man, and our Roman instincts. It is true that Lygia is more to me than all Rome and its lordship, and I would let society vanish could I have her in my house. But that is another thing. Agreement in words do not satisfy the Christians. A man must feel that their teaching is true, and not have aught else in his soul. But that, the gods are my witnesses, is beyond me. Those understand what that means? There is something in my nature which shudders at this religion, and were my lips to glorify it, were I to conform to its precepts, my soul and my reason will say that I do so through love for Ligia, and that apart from her there is to me nothing on earth more repulsive. A strange thing. Paul of Tarsus understand this, and so does that old Turgus Peter, who in spite of all his simplicity and low origins in the highest among them, and was the disciple of Christ. And those though know what they are doing, they are praying for me and calling down something which they call grace. But nothing descends on me except disquiet and great yearning for Lydia. I have written that she went away secretly, but when going she left me a cross which she put together from twigs of boxwood. When I woke up I found it near my bed. I have it now in that lararium, and I approach it, yet I cannot tell why, as if there were something divine in it, that is, with awe and reverence. I love it because her hand bound it, and I hate it because it divides us. At times it seems to me that there are enchantments of some kind in all this affair, and that Theurgus Pita, through the he declares himself to be a simple shepherd, is a greater than Apollonius and all who preceded him, and that he has involved us, Ligia, Pomponia, and me with them. Thou hast written that in my previous letter disquiet and sadness are visible. Sadness there must be, for I have lost her again, and there is disquiet because something has changed in me. I tell this sincerely, that nothing is more repugnant to my nature than that of religion, and still I cannot recognize myself since I met Ligia. It is enchantment or love. Circe changed people's bodies by touching them, but my soul I, but my soul has been changed. No one but Ligia could have done that, or rather Ligia, through that wonderful religion which she professes. When I returned to my house from the Christians, no one was waiting for me. The slaves thought that I was in Beneventum, and will not return soon. Hence there was disorder in the house. I found the slaves drunk, and a feast, which they were giving themselves in the triclinium. They had more thought of seeing death than me, and will have been less terrified by it. Thou knowest with what a firm hand I hold my house, all to the last dropped on their knees, and some fainted from terror. But those thou know how I acted. At the first moment I wished to call for rods and hot iron, but immediately a kind of shame seized me, and will thou let believe a species of pity for those wretched people. Among them are all slaves from my grandfather Marcus Vinicius, brought from the Rhine in the time of Augustus. But I shut myself up alone in the library, and there came stranger thoughts still to my head, namely, that after what I had heard and see among the Christians, it did not become me to act with slaves as I had acted hitherto, that they too were people. For a number of days they moved about in mortal terror, in the belief that I was delaying so as to invent punishment to more cruel. But I did not punish, and did not punish because I was not able. Summoning them on the third day, I said, I forgive you. Strive then with earnest service to correct your fault. They fell on their knees, covering their faces with tears, stretching forth their hands with groans, and called me Lord and Father. But I, with shame do I write this, was equally moved. It seems to me that at that moment I was looking at the sweet face of Ligia, and her eyes filled with tears, thanking me for that act, and pro pudor I felt that my lips too were moist. Those know that I will confess to thee this, that I cannot do without her, that it is ill for me alone, that I am simply unhappy, that my sadness is greater than thou wilt admit. But as to but as to my slave, one thing arrested my attention, that forgiveness which they received not only did not make them insolent, Not only did not weaken discipline, but never fear arose them to such ready service as a gratitude. Not only do they serve, but they seem to vie with one another to divine my wishes. I mention this to thee because when the day before I left to the Christians, I told Paul that society will fall apart before because of this religion. As a cask without hoops, he answered, love is stronger hope than fear. And now I see that in certain cases his opinion might be right. I have verified it also with reference to clients who, learning of my return, hurried to salute me. Thou knowest that I have never been penurious with them, but my father acted haughtily with clients on principle, and taught me to treat them in like manner. But when I saw their warm mantles and hungry faces, I had a feeling something like compassion. I gave command to bring them food, and conversed besides with them, called some by name, and I asked about their wives and children. And again in their eyes before me I saw tears. Again it seemed to me that Ligia saw that I was what I was doing, that she praised and was delighted. Is my mind beginning to wander, or is love confusing my feelings? I cannot tell, but this I do know. I have a continual feeling that she is looking at me from a distance, that I am afraid to do aught what I might trouble or offend her. So it is, Caius, but they have changed my soul, and sometimes I feel well for that reason. At times again I am tormented with the thought, for I fear that my manhood and energy are taken from me, that perhaps I am useless, not only for counsel, for judgment, for feast, but for war even. These are undoubted enchantments, and to such a degree I am changed that I tell thee this, too, which came to my head when I lay wounded, that if Lygia were like Nigidia, Pompeia, Crispinilla, and our divorced women, if she were as vile, as pitiless, and as cheap as they, I should not love her as I do at present. But since I love her, that which divides us, thou wilt divine that what a chaos is rising in my soul, in what darkness I live, how it is that I cannot see certain roads before me, and how far I am knowing what to begin. I live, if life might be compared to a spring. In my spring disquiet flows instead of water. I live through the hope that I shall see her, perhaps, and sometimes it seems to me that I shall see her surely. But what will happen to me in a year or 2 years, I know not, I cannot divine. I shall not leave Rome. I cannot endorse the society of the Augustins. And besides, the only solace in my sadness and disquiet is the thought that I am near Lygia, that through Glaucus, the physician who promised to visit me, or through Paul of Tarsus, I can learn something of her at times. No, I would not leave Rome, even were ye to offer me the government of Egypt. Know also that I have ordered to sculptor to make a stone monument for Gulo, whom I slew in anger. Too little did it come to mind that he had carried me in his arms, and was the first to teach me how to put an arrow on a bow. I know not why it was that a recollection of him rose in me, which was sorrow and reproach. If that I write astonish thee, I reply that it astonished me no less, but I write pure truth. Farewell.